Hey guys, and welcome to another episode with me at the State of Flow podcast. I'm so glad to have you here. I hope everyone is doing well and we're all cocooning and really finding amidst the chaos and the storm time to really come home to ourselves again and enjoy and find pleasure in the simple things and reconnect, come back to our roots. And this is also what this week's episode is going to be about. By the way, this is our first ever podcast episode. That's also our video podcast, which you'll be able to find at YouTube. So welcome to our viewers. And yes, so this week's podcast episode is about coming back to our roots by living in sync. Living in Sync is also an e-course that I'm releasing soon via Elevate Mind Body Thrive. And it's all about living in accordance to your and nature's natural rhythms and finding more balance with Ayurveda in any season of your life and of the year for optimal well-being, vitality, immunity, and to just really feel balanced and thrive. And so today I want to talk about where we're currently at. According to Ayurveda, well, not just according to Ayurveda, we're obviously in autumn season, but according to Ayurveda, things are in season for a reason, and seasons exist for a reason as well. And we find ourselves going through different cycles as the year goes by and as our life goes by. And the saying, there's a time for everything, is pretty damn true. There's a whole science which is called chronobiology, which has emerged, I think, in the last couple of decades, which is super, super amazing. And at the same time, it just, I don't know, I always find it really exciting and also kind of hilarious when Western science finally comes to the conclusions of what Chinese and traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and other modalities have known intuitively and naturally for thousands of years. Like, for example, now we get scientific research on that breathing and yoga actually increases the oxygen supply to the brain and can alter our brainwaves. It's like, oh my God, breathing deeply actually has a positive effect on your body. Amazing. But, our ancient ancestors have known this for thousands of years. It's nothing new. And it's just that sometimes in our Western cultures, we need to codify everything and need to scientifically prove everything and label everything and put it into a box in order for it to be true. Which I always, find, take things with a grain of salt. And it's incredible, but it's also just funny to observe. Anyways, chronobiology basically is a new specialized field within human biology, well, within biology in general, that's concerned with that different parts of our bodies and of organisms and of things in nature have different functions at different times. So that the same organs in your body that might be there to fulfill one function at one certain time of the day will actually fulfill or undergo a different function or process at another time of the day. So chronobiology is a lot to do with that. It's not just in terms of diet, for example. It's not just about what we eat, but more so when and how. And speaking of the dietary stuff, I've done an episode on that. I think it was the second or third episode of this podcast that spoke about the energetics of food. Obviously also from an Ayurvedic perspective. So if you're more interested in that and you haven't listened to it, head over to check it out. So based on chronobiology and Ayurveda, we go through different motions at different times of the year and lifetime, and therefore we find balance and optimal health and well-being through different things at different times. So given it's autumn right now, at least in the southern hemisphere, and you do find quite a bit of correlations for springtime in the northern hemisphere, I want to just talk about what we're going through right now, because another thing that Ayurveda emphasizes a lot is to live in the present, in the here and now, to single task in order to reduce Vata, reduce stress, reduce anxiety, our society is so prone to multitask, to always be busy, to constantly be stressed, to do more instead of less. And that's actually also what the autumn season is about, Vata. So autumn season is governed by Vata dosha. Vata dosha, again referring to earlier episodes. If you're not familiar with the basics of Ayurveda, I'd love you to go back to, actually that might be episode 2 or 3 of this podcast, which is on the foundations of Ayurveda, in which you get to understand the 5 different elements that then create 3 different doshas, Vata, Pitta and Kapha. And Vata is this dosha or constitution that governs autumn. So all those different doshas have different qualities. Vata is made of air and ether elements, and therefore Vata's qualities are damp in Chinese medicine, or oily in Ayurveda. Sorry, that's completely wrong. It's dry. It's drying like the wind. It's mobile, it's cold, it's changeable, it's light, and it's subtle. So if you think of the qualities of the actual element of the air that's surrounding you, if you think of, we're here in the southwest of Australia, you get those amazing autumn swells in like massive waves smashing into the shores. You get all those stormy kind of weather patterns with wind coming from all sorts of different directions. And it is the season of getting head colds, of getting kind of sinusy things, not necessarily congestion, but maybe getting a cough or a cold or something here and there. And that's because in Ayurveda we say like attracts like and opposites balance. So if you're already in a very airy, windy, cold, mobile, light, dry kind of season, and we bombard ourselves with more of the same qualities in what we do and what we eat and how we think and surround ourselves, then we're only going to create an imbalance, because we're kind of driving this Vata over the top in our bodies. Therefore, we want to balance ourselves by bringing in the opposite qualities, which are warming, grounding, heavy and gross. What else is there? Oily as opposed to dry. And grounded, sturdy, stable as opposed to mobile. And we do that through our lifestyle, our diet, which will ultimately affect our mindset and our emotions. And we can bring in herbs. And when we're talking of herbs and supplements and stuff, always know that herbs really are only a supplementation to your lifestyle and your diet. So if you're not following through and you're not doing the right things for you in your lifestyle and your diet, there's not really point in trying to make up for it with herbs, because you don't have a foundation there. But let's talk a little bit about how we can balance ourselves more in Vata season. In terms of imbalances, I've already named a few physical things, like, getting your head colds, getting sinusy things, getting bronchitis and respiratory imbalances. Funnily enough, that's what's going on right now in the world as well. And I think I mentioned that in my last episode, with the virus currently going on, causing this pandemic, always keep in mind, instead of buying into the fear, keep in mind that we are just in this transitory season of Vata. I always find that, we are talking of 4 seasons, but there's summer and there's winter, which are kind of direct opposites. And I find that spring and autumn actually act more as transitory seasons, as like a transition from summer to winter to summer. And according to Ayurveda, our bodies love routine and thrive on routine and are the healthiest on routine. And that's why Ayurveda emphasizes dinacharya, which is your daily practice, as well as your seasonal practices and routines so much, because that's how we achieve and obtain and maintain our health, while our minds obviously do love flexibility. So yes, we find that in those transitory seasons we're going through, We are kind of off center, we are irregular, we are not in our routine. We had our summer routine and now we're trying to transition into winter, into colder climate. So if we look at our environment, there's a lot of transition going on, right? And in the climate and the temperature and the actual weather patterns, from like sunny blue skies to kind of clouds on and off and fast moving, and rain to storm to sunshine and so forth. So there's a lot of fluctuation going on, which in turn, because everything affects each other and is connected to each other, creates fluctuation in our body. And it kind of pushes us out of our seat a little bit, or gets us a little bit off balance already anyways, because we are moving, we are transitioning to then settle ourselves back into this new routine, which is winter. So whenever we find ourselves in transitory situations, we find that we are actually more susceptible to getting off balance through diseases, through infections. It's whenever we are less stable and a little bit transient or transitory in any way, that's mentally, physically, emotionally, obviously they all go together, we are more susceptible to even viruses or catching the cold, because it weakens our immunity. And it does not only have to be autumn season or the seasonal transitions. It's a part of that, or a potential pathogenesis of that. But it can also occur that our immunity is weakened, and we in general are weakened and more susceptible to stuff when we, for example, change a job, or just had a baby, or just have massive life-altering, life-changing situations we're in that are just kind of shaking up our routine, our daily schedules, and so forth. That's where we leave ourselves most susceptible. And so this is why in autumn season, we're really, really focusing on regrounding this Vata. Whenever we are in transition, we find that Vata and Ether is the first dosha within us to be aggravated. Vata in general is always the first dosha to be aggravated and gets out of its seat the easiest, yet it also is very easy to rebalance. And that is mainly, although diet has a massive part in it, but Vata is the cause of, when it's out of balance, of anxiety, of stress, of insomnia, of feeling scattered and frazzled and exhausted and depleted and dry and not super focused or functioning all the time. Gosh, I'm really losing my points here. This is the first podcast in a while. But yes, Vata is basically the cause of all these kind of airy imbalances. And therefore, it's the first thing we need to rebalance. And like I mentioned, the qualities of Vata, and therefore autumn season, because autumn is Vata time, it's governed by Vata, are dry, light, mobile, rough, cold, and so forth. So we want to ground it with the opposite. And you find that these are actually qualities of the pathogenesis I just named as well, which are your anxiety, your insomnia, your scatteredness, forgetting to eat, just snacking all day, having irregular digestion, irregular sleep, mobile, and so forth. So like I mentioned, we balance it with opposites. And while diet has a part, I just talked about routine. And routine is actually the key to get Vata dosha back into balance, not only in autumn, but whenever you have those kind of symptoms, as I just mentioned, it's very likely that your Vata has gone out of balance. It's the same as when you're stressed. Any feelings of stress that cause tension and constriction in your body usually are a sign of Vata out of balance. So all those remedies we're going to go through right now are applicable generally for all these kind of imbalances. Cool. So like mentioned, routine is a massive key, and we could spend actually hours and hours and hours talking about this, and I do so in our Living in Sync e-course that's coming out now at the end of April. But just to get the basics right in a quickie here, routine means to have the same or very, very similar eating and sleeping schedules every day. That's so important. And especially now, it's like, you notice that the days are getting shorter, we tend to sleep longer, we tend to often go to bed later as we start to get less and less daylight. And we're also often tempted to just stay out and up on the weekend for longer and have sleep-ins more so than we do during the week. Perhaps right now we're all a little bit more balanced because many of us are at home or have this little bit more free time than we're used to, which is fantastic because it gives us more time to connect to ourselves and, get all those things right that might feel out of balance within us and really practice our self-care. So you want to make sure that you rise and go to bed at about the same time every day. As I mentioned before, Ayurveda is so much about the individual, about bio-individuality. So everything I'm saying here, everything you'd ever be reading on a blog article, on the internet, anywhere else, will always be generalized information. Ayurveda is not about one size fits all. It's very much about your symptoms are unique to you. They might have a completely different root cause to the same symptoms that I experience, and therefore we need to address you as an individual, which I do in my work a lot. Basically, as a generalized rule, when it comes to bedtimes, you want to go to bed between, say, 10 and 10:30 at night. Make sure you turn off your electronics at least an hour before you go to bed. Ideally around 9 o'clock, shut it all off and start dimming the lights and start with activities that help you to get ready for bed, that allow your nervous system to wind down and prepare you for a good night's sleep. That's another big concept in Ayurveda, that we tend to just do all those things without thinking in our daily life. Yet Ayurveda really emphasizes that everything that happens in life is a 3-stage process that consists of prepare, do, recover. And if you can follow these steps, it sounds like you have to really overthink everything you do. But once it becomes second nature, then no matter if you eat a cookie here and there or binge out on chocolate over Easter, you prepare for that Easter holiday. Then you do and eat the chocolate, and then you recover, maybe with a mild Ayurvedic cleanse and so forth. And, so it's the same with going to bed. You want to prepare for a good night's sleep by winding your nervous system down, by turning off the electronics, by dimming the lights, by doing calming things, like maybe you do a little bit of yin yoga, a few stretches before going to bed. Maybe you read a book or something calming. Like don't do your homework or something that's super strenuous on your brain directly before you go to bed, but something that really allows your brain and therefore your nervous system to wind down. A good analogy is that if you're driving your car at like 120 on the highway and you want to go into the garage, you get a break at some point to slowly drive into the garage and not smash through the wall. There's no way of getting your car from going 120 to stop and still, right? It's the exact same with our bodies and nervous system, and that's where prepare, do, recover comes in. So going to bed at 10 to 10:30, around that, again, that's individual slightly for everyone. And then we want to make sure that we rise around 6:30, let's say 7 latest. Again, it's slightly different for different body types. You find that Kapha individuals want to rise the earliest, between say 5 and 5:30. Pitta individuals, they're always the moderate in-betweeners, want to rise second at like 5:30 to 6 or so. And then Vata individuals that are naturally very airy fairy and easily go off with the fairies and often miss their sustainable nourishment and grounding, these individuals want to sleep a little bit longer, say until 6:30 to 7. So again, rising between like 6 and 7 will be ideal. Make sure that you're not sleeping much past this, because otherwise you'll be sleeping into the Kapha time of the day, which again, like attracts like. Kapha is earth and water energy, very heavy, very slow, very grounded. So if you're sleeping into that time of the day, which sleeping has the same kind of energies, you're going over the top. When you sleep in and the rest of your day just turns into something really lethargic, yeah, you slept into the Kapha time of the day, and it's hard to get yourself out of that. But establishing those, some people of you guys might do shift work or something. So even if you can't go to bed and rise every day at the exact same time, try to make it as regular as possible. Say if like every Tuesday you have a night shift, then create this routine that every Tuesday you have routine B. Well, all the other days you have your routine A. Okay, same, that goes for your sleeping cycles, that goes for your food. Food-wise, let's make sure to really have food, a nice and sustainable grounding meal at similar times or the same times every day. Have your breakfast between 8 and 9, have your lunch in between, say, 12 and 1, and have your dinner not so much after sunrise, because our metabolic rate goes pretty close down to 0 in the digestive system after 8 o'clock. Remember the chronobiology thing. So you want to ideally eat a nice and light dinner, yet grounding between 5 and 6 p.m. It might be a little bit unsustainable for some of you guys. We're all, everyone is busy, and many of us in Western cultures are actually quite used to eating later. So say in between 5:30 and 7 will still be ideal. Let's look at what we can eat. So as said before, it's not so much about the what, it's more about the how and when. So make sure that you have those regular times. Make sure that when you eat. Like single tasking is one of the major medicines when your Vata is deranged, when you're feeling stress. Avoiding stimulants, that's your coffee and caffeine, but it can also be your Facebook feed. Okay, like overstimulation in your environment in general. And then stimulants in terms of alcohol, sugar, drugs, caffeine, they are all things that send you further off with the fairies again. So try to avoid or really minimalize those things. And instead of focusing on taking out certain things that can sometimes make it really hard to quit something, rather focus on what we're getting to, what you want to incorporate more of, what you want to cooperate in more of. You know what I'm saying. So instead of, remember the qualities we went through. Right now our environment is dry, mobile, cold, changeable, subtle, and rough. So we want to create the opposite qualities on what we do, what we eat, and how we treat ourselves. So in terms of food, instead of having your popcorn and rice crackers and chips and all these like dry, crunchy things, and believe me that I'm quite high in Vata as well, and you probably find that all those dry, crunchy things are exactly what you're craving if you're Vata person and if your Vata is a little bit through the roof. The thing is that when we're not in a balanced state, we will always crave things that bring us more out of balance, while when we're in a balanced and healthy state, we will naturally crave things that help us to maintain this balanced and healthy state. So trying to move away from all those dry and crunchy things that we quite often eat, especially the Vata people amongst us, for snacking and grazing all throughout the day instead of having a proper and sustainable meal and breaks in between meals. Instead, let's bulk up on all those really nourishing, hearty, warming, oily in terms of liquidy things. So soups, stews, curries, grounding root vegetables, so amazing. Remember I said at the start of the podcast, things are in season for a reason. And so just go, many local farmers markets might be constricted somehow, but just check what's local in your environment right now, in your neighborhood, what's the local produce in your area, and then cook with that. We, for example, down here have quite a few people who have now, due to our pandemic situation, started home deliveries, a lot of the fruit and vegetable places. And there's one place I love to buy from, the growers market in Dunsborough down here in the southwest, offering home deliveries, and it's all organic or spray free, and it's all local produce. What they offer though is like a weekly either organic or conventional fruit and veg box. So if you just offer this if you just buy like a local seasonal fruit and veg box from your local fruit and veg person, you can be pretty sure that all the stuff contained in that box will be seasonal. If you buy local, you're pretty safe to also eat seasonally. And again, that's where chronobiology comes in. Like certain things happen for a reason at certain times. So certain foods grow for a reason at certain times of the year in order to support certain functions and other organisms like ourselves. So that's why citrus and things are slowly starting to come out now, because all this vitamin C and so forth is actually helping to boost our immunity that can be a little bit low or a little bit off in autumn or when winter comes around. So buy and eat locally, orientate on everything that's really grounding, heavy, nourishing. Like, I'm not talking mac and cheese, obviously. I'm talking real food. Like, if you want to orientate on what's good for you, buy food that's not packaged. That's a really great rule of thumb. Most of you know what you should eat anyways, but orientate on everything that just has this nourishing feel to it. Then using healthy fats and oils is so important right now. I've just cooked up a whole bought from the same guys, organic grass-fed butter. That's kind of the only animal product we use other than from our own happy chickens here, eggs every now and then. But I just made a whole batch of beautiful ghee from that. And ghee is one of the best fats you can use. Ghee has an absorption rate of, I think, 97%, while other fats have a way, way, way lower absorption rate, meaning it's absorbed into your body at that rate. And ghee is basically clarified butter. So all the milk fat and the lactose stuff is separated from it, and all that's left is just this, it looks like golden liquid when you cook ghee. It's pretty amazing. Anyways, if you find, if you're vegan or you have any dietary restrictions, there are other healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil, like coconut oil, sesame oil, and so forth. Using those healthy fats, avocados, which are also in season for months now down here anyways. And nuts and seeds are amazing and nourishing, especially for Vata people, especially if you're feeling very dry and so forth. Speaking of dryness and routine, another amazing thing to do right now, especially in autumn, is Abhyanga. That's your daily self-massage with warm oil. I just use normal sesame oil. Sometimes I use medicated sesame oil. When I'm saying sesame oil, I had a client the other day who actually bought the roasted sesame oil, the cooking one from the store. You don't really want to do that. Go to a health food store, get the virgin, the cold pressed, organic sesame oil that's unprocessed, and it smells actually amazing, and it's super nourishing for your skin, especially if you're a Vata person, because it has a warming and grounding effect and quality, apart from it also being oil, which usually is, nourishing. Or just building foods are amazing. So have one of my favorite recipes, for example, is masala milk or spiced milk, and you can use almond milk. You can make it at home. Just soak your almonds overnight, blend it the next day, strain it, beautiful, with a little bit of ghee, nutmeg, and cinnamon. It's just amazing to warm up your body. And dates, a cup of soaked dates, and blend it. And it just helps to, again, warm up your body through this warming spices, so it can help to really balance irregular digestion, which is also often a Vata cause. Notice how your digestion is responding when you're feeling stressed or anxious or anything along those lines. Quite often you find that it's irregular, can lead to constipation and so forth, and so can the transition in seasons as our body's getting used to new environments. So this milk recipe is a really beautiful one to soothe the digestion. It really helps you to calm down and calm the nervous system, especially at night. I often do this milk recipe before I go to bed, warm. And so routine and warming, grounding foods are amazing things for Vata. What else helps to bring Vata back into balance? Well, grounding practices, grounding lifestyle practices. That can be slowing down your yoga practice, maybe going from an Ashtanga or Vinyasa flow yoga practice to something more that's kind of slow Hatha or slow, sturdy sun salutations, or yin yoga or restorative yoga. If yoga is not your cup of tea, any kind of exercise that's ideally connected to or within nature, and that has this kind of repetitive, meditative energy to it. So it's not really the time, again, that's generalized, for high intensity stuff right now. It's most of the time for restorative grounding stuff. So maybe that's walks in nature. Maybe that's even your surf. Speaking of any outside stuff, especially surfing, you want to stay warm in Vata season, and especially as a Vata person, make sure that you are staying warm. So wear a nice and thick rashi. Otherwise, if you're getting cold, it causes vasoconstriction, so it's tightening all your blood vessels, which is reducing the flow of blood and flow of oxygen at a time where you're already a little bit depleted because it's Vata time, and where you really need the warmth and nourishment, as opposed to Vata, which is cold, rough, mobile, depleting, and so forth. But otherwise, in terms of lifestyle practices, anything that brings you back to self and nature, like walk barefoot, go for nature walks every day, get your feet on the ground, touch the ground, meditate in nature. Meditation in general, breath work, mindfulness practices, reading books, doing craft, doing art, playing music, using your creativity to reconnect back to here, to yourself, right? Whenever we come out of our being busy bubble and doing things because trying to achieve a certain goal, like when we come out of this doing things for a particular outcome, and instead move into doing just because it brings us fun or joy or grounding or it feels beautiful or whatever it is. All those things just coming out of the space of busyness into the space of being reconnects us back to ourselves and helps to bring especially Vata dosha back into its seat. So autumn or even spring, those transitory seasons are a massive time for coming home to ourselves. And you can think of what personal practices these are for you that bring you back home to yourself and that bring you back into your seat and back into grounding. All these things, basically everything that is releasing stress, will help you to decrease your Vata and balance your Vata. I just looked to the left side of my beautiful home office desk here, and I just saw, I can show you a video, guys, that one of my plants broke. Oh, and I'm just such a plant fanatic. Anyways, so Vata season is also about slowing down and about, instead of being fanatic about things like my plants, getting your calm back on. You know, being aware of our emotions and what's triggering our emotions and how our environment is affecting us. Another thing, speaking of plants, getting your hands into the soil, like do your winter garden, do your veggie patch. Connect with the earth that way, get your hands literally dirty. Also, with us having so much more time on our hands right now, it's time for home cooking, for contemplating your nourishment through food. Like, what have you been eating lately and how has it been actually affecting your body? Has it actually been nourishing or has it been rather depleting? Has it been empty calories eaten on the go, really mindlessly, or have you been using food as medicine and as nourishment in a really wholesome way for yourself? So I think that right now, it being autumn and us being, all of us being forced to be at home in our cocoon, which I like to call it, instead of isolation, is actually a really beautiful time for us to contemplate things and to reflect on how we have been showing up for ourselves and how we can show up for ourselves right now. So, you know, I also think that with what's going on in the world right now, no major changes are ever going to happen, especially when you talk about raising the collective consciousness, without a crisis or without a big downfall. So what we're going through right now is absolutely necessary for evolution, for change, for growth and elevation. So while we sit all this out and patiently wait to see the light at the other side of the tunnel, we might as well journey as well as we can and really use this mandatory time off from busy life to really reconnect back to ourselves and ground. So key points to really reground your Vata, I think, you get it by now, is de-stress, slow down, ground, warm, and nourish yourself. Establish a healthy self-care routine, including your eating times and your sleeping times. If that's the only thing you're taking away from this episode, then that's the one. Have this regular routine. Don't snack all day. Have your set meals, nourishment. Beautiful. Oh, and a few herbs I wanted to mention. Again, I wouldn't encourage you to start with herbs if you haven't yet checked in with your lifestyle and your diet. But beautiful building, revitalizing, and nourishing herbs that are also nervines and therefore relax the nervous system and balance Vata dosha are ashwagandha, which is a adaptogenic herb, so shatavari. Both are very grounding, very warming, and building, as in nourishing your tissues. Beautiful for Vata time of the year. For digestive support in terms of Ayurvedic herbs, I would recommend Triphala. If you feel very dry and buttery, you might want to have that with some healthy fatter oils like ghee or coconut oil. Yeah. So like I said, I could keep talking about those things for hours and hours, and I kind of do in the Living in Sync e-course. So if you're interested in learning more about living in sync with the seasons of yourself and of your environment for optimal vitality, immunity, and well-being at any season of the year in your life,